I wanted to talk about the creation story from various writings. Well, in Genesis 1, we see that God created light. At first, there was darkness upon the deep, and then He created light. And He called the light day, and He called the darkness night. And on the third day, the earth brought forth grass and green fruit, green leaves and things like that, herb yielding seed, fruit, all of that kind of stuff. And then the sun was made. So I've made this point in a previous video, but I know I have a lot new subscribers since then. NASA says that the Big Bang happened and the sun was formed and everything was sort of revolving around the sun, and there was no such thing as green, plants and trees and fruit until after the sun, until after. So you either have to believe Genesis 1 or NASA as far as your creation story. They do not go together. They are conflicting stories. The sun was created after the green, after the plants and the trees and the fruit and all that stuff. And it was also created after there was already light. There was already day and night before the sun was created. So the sun that we see in the sky has nothing to do with whether or not we're in daytime or nighttime. And from the Nazarene Acts of the Apostles, which is also known as the Recognitions of Clement, I'm going to read from page 35. Actually, before then, I'll go up a little bit. I just thought this was interesting at 34. It talks about how to be a friend of Yahweh, a friend of our Creator, just like Enoch was supposed to be a friend of God. So it says, his friendship is secured by living well and by obeying his will, which will is Torah of all that live. So his will is to do the commandments, basically. And of course, that's what I've been talking about the whole time. But that's how you are a friend of God. In Hosea 2:16, we see that our Father said that it shall be at that day, at the end, saith Yahweh, that thou shalt call me Ishi, and shalt call me no more Bali. And Bali it means Lord. The word, it's where Baal, the Lord comes from. But he says that you're going to call me Ishi instead. You're not going to call me like your master. You're going to call me friend. Ishi is also known as friend in some ways, some translations. It could be just like another or a counselor too, but I find it interesting because we know that Enoch was called the friend of God. So, we would be calling him friends. And even Yehoshua said the same thing. In Hosea, you see that Yahweh is saying, you're not going to call me Lord anymore. You're going to call me friend. And then we see that from the Nazarene Acts that you are a friend if you're obeying his will. And we see in John 15:15, he said, henceforth I call you not servants, for the servant knoweth not what his Lord doeth, but I have called you friends. For all things that I have heard of my Father I have made known unto you. And verse 14, it says, you are my friends if you do what I command you. So just like Yahweh said that, if you keep his commands, then you would be a friend of his. You'd be a friend of God or a friend of Yahweh, right? Friend of the Creator. So if we do his will, we will be known as friends, and we're not going to be servants anymore. We're not going to be servants. Like, this would be master is the same word as Lord, you can see here. So, you can see that Yehoshua was saying basically the exact same thing that Yahweh was saying back in Hosea, that we're supposed to be friends of our Creator. We're not supposed to be like, feeling like servants of a Lord, like those who serve Baal and, call him their Lord as if they are afraid of him. Our Father is perfect love, and there's nothing to be afraid of. If we do his will, we will be considered a friend of his. And his will is not burdensome at all. The commandments are not burdensome. And it's a pleasure. It's honestly a pleasure to do His will. So I know that was a side note. It was just interesting that that was right before this. All right, from the Nazarene Acts, otherwise known as the Recognitions of Clement, I'll leave the link below. We see chapter 27, account of creation. In the beginning, when Yahweh had made the heaven and the earth as one house, the shadow that was cast by the mundane bodies involved in darkness, those things that were enclosed in it, and the sentence doesn't get finished. I found that very interesting. There's no, verb. It never goes anywhere. So I asked the translator, Jackson Snyder, about this morning, and we were discussing it. The original, he had to translate something that was already translated. We never get like the original, right? Um, it came through Catholic hands basically from the beginning. They don't believe this is canon. They put it out there, but they don't actually think that it's canon, and they don't really think anybody should listen to it, basically. Um, but they did put it out there, and he translated from their texts. I think it was from Latin. And originally, the translator had said, I guess, that some of the texts were corrupted, and so they didn't translate those sections. But what I find interesting is that it goes right into the next sentence, and if all this was perfectly clear, why was this one little part not clear? And so we discussed it. He said that there were portions where he thinks that they just they said something was unintelligible and didn't bother translating it if they didn't agree with it. He tried to fill it in with other works like the Clementine homilies in various sections. In this section, it just seems to have disappeared, whatever the rest of this sentence was. So I find that very interesting because what it's talking about, it's pretty important. The creation of the world. What happened between this sentence and the next sentence? Well, the next sentence says, "But when the will of Yahweh had introduced light, that darkness that had been caused by the shadows of bodies was straightway dispelled." I'm not going to continue yet, but I just thought that was interesting. It says that there was darkness that was caused by the shadows of bodies. So the shadows of bodies were causing darkness in the beginning. The shadows of bodies were causing darkness in the beginning. So I'm just wondering what exactly that means. That seems to be what it was talking about here. It says the shadow that was cast by the mundane bodies involved in darkness. So there were mundane bodies involved in darkness that were casting shadows. They were the creation. They were causing shadows at the beginning. So I just thought that was interesting. What kind of bodies? The heavenly bodies? Was this, dealing with a heavenly body that was casting shadows on the earth? It's just interesting to think about because of what I'm going to share in this video. I'm going to play Mr. Thrive and Survive's video, and he plays a video of the eclipse, a 360-degree video of the eclipse. And it was up in the air, and it caught something that's very, very interesting. So I'm just wondering if there wasn't something in the heavens, some sort of heavenly body casting a shadow to the earth in the beginning. But then the will of Yahweh had introduced light, and that darkness that had been caused by the shadows of those bodies was straightway dispelled. Then at length light is appointed for the day, darkness for the night. Once again, we see that the light was, originally created by him, and he created light and darkness. And now the water that was within the world in the middle space of that first heaven and earth, congealed as if with frost, and solid as crystal, is distended, and the middle spaces of the heaven and earth are separated as by a firmament of this sort. So this is interesting because some people have tried to figure out what the firmament is created out of. And the Nazarene Act seems to suggest that it's created out of water, like frost. Um, I'm not entirely sure on everything here for what it looks like, but it's interesting. I think it's something we should be considering. So I'll just start reading a little bit earlier again and just read it through. And now the water that was within the world, in the middle space of that first heaven and earth, congealed as if with frost, and solid as crystal is distended, and the middle spaces of the heaven and the earth are separated as by a firmament of this sort. And that firmament the Creator called heaven, so called by the name of that previously made, and so he divided into two portions that fabric of the universe, although it was but one house. The reason of the division was this, that the upper portion might afford a dwelling place to Malachim, angels, and the lower to men. After this, the place of the sea and the chaos that had been made received that portion of the water that remained below, by order of the ageless will, and these flowing down to the sunken hollow places, the dry land appeared. And the gatherings of the waters were made seas, and after this the earth, which had appeared, produced various species of herbs and shrubs. It gave forth fountains also, and rivers, not only in the plains, but on the mountains. And so all things were prepared, that men who were to dwell in it might have it in their power to use all these things according to their will, that is, either for good or evil. The next chapter. After this he adorns the visible sky with stars. He places in it also the sun and the moon. So once again we see that the herbs and shrubs and all that stuff, that was all there before the sun and the moon happened to come along. So the Big Bang idea that the sun came first and all life sprung from it is completely erroneous if you want to trust the scriptures. Okay, so after this he adorns that visible sky with stars. He places in it also the sun and the moon, that the day might enjoy the light of the one, the night that of the other, and that at the same time they might be for an indication of things past, present, and future. For they were made for signs of seasons and of days, which, although they are seen indeed by all, are understood only by the learned and the intelligent. So the sun and the moon and the stars and the sky are like our time clock for times and seasons, and we are to know what time and season we're in by that clock. Only those who are learned and intelligent will be able to understand what time and season we're in. Just remember that when you think about the Revelation 12 sign and the people who are ignoring it as if it's nothing, especially with all these other signs like the eclipse and everything. Just remember that. It's not, trying to figure out what our future is, what our future holds, and all that stuff like astrology type stuff. It's astronomy. It's what it was made there for, to know the signs and, seasons and everything of what we're going through. All right. And when after this he had ordered living creatures to be produced from the earth and the waters, he made paradise, which also he named a place of delights. But after all these things he made man, on whose account he had prepared all things, whose internal species is older, and for whose sake all things that were made, given up to his service and assigned to the uses of his habitation. The next chapter, the Nephilim, the flood. All things therefore being completed that are in heaven and in earth and in the waters, and the human race also having multiplied in the 8th generation, Zadokим, who had lived the life of Malachim, angels, being allured by the beauty of women, fell into promiscuous and illicit connections with these, and thenceforth, acting in all things without discretion and disorderly, they changed the state of human affairs and the divinely prescribed order of life, so that either by persuasion or force they compelled all men to sin against Yahweh their Creator. In the 9th generation are born the Gibborim, so called from of old, not dragon-footed as the fables of the Greeks relate, but men of immense bodies, whose bones of enormous size are still shown in some places for confirmation. But against these the righteous providence of Yahweh brought a flood upon the world, that the earth might be purified from their pollution, and every place might be turned into a sea by the destruction of the immoral. Yet there was then found one righteous man by name Noah, who, being delivered in the Taiva with his 3 sons and their wives, became the colonizer of the world after the subsiding of the waters with those animals and seeds he had shut up with him. The next chapter. In the 12th generation, when Yahweh had blessed men and they had begun to multiply, they received a commandment that they should not taste blood. For on account of this also the deluge had been sent. Now, I'm not going to read the whole thing here, but I just wanted to point out that a lot of people talk about the flood, Noah, him getting off and then being allowed to eat meat all of a sudden, whereas the Nazarene Act says he came with seeds so that he could grow things, so that he could eat those. And they received a commandment that they should not taste blood. And no matter what, if you eat meat, you're eating blood. You cannot get the blood out of an animal. From the Epic of Gilgamesh, it talks about the flood, and so I think this is where the pagan idea that all of a sudden people could eat meat and sacrifice and all that stuff comes from. It says, when the flood was over, Ut Anaptashim opens the window in the ark for light and fresh air. Finally, the ark landed on Mount Nimush. After 7 days, I'm not going to read that name again, I'll butcher it, releases a dove, which came back. Then he released a swallow, which also came back. Finally, he sends out a raven, which does not come back. He opens the ark and lets all the animals go free. He then offers a sheep sacrifice and incense to the gods, who had not been fed by man's sacrifice since the flood began. Overcome with hunger, they swarm like flies over the sacrifice. Does that sound like our Father? That the gods would swarm like flies over a sacrifice, because they haven't eaten and everything. It sounds like the Nephilim spirits, because they were the ones that longed for blood and flesh. And we see in Psalm 50 that Yahweh hates the sacrifices. It says, Psalm 50, verse 8, I will not reprove thee for thy sacrifices or thy burnt offerings to have been continually before me. I will take no bullock out of thy house, nor the he-goats out of thy folds. For every beast of the forest is mine, and the cattle upon 1,000 hills. I know all the fowls of the mountains, and the wild beasts of the field are mine. If I were hungry, I would not tell thee. For the world is mine, and the fullness thereof. Will I eat the flesh of bulls, or drink the blood of goats? Offer unto God thanksgiving, and pay thy vows unto the Most High. And call upon me in the day of trouble. I will deliver thee, and thou shalt glorify me. But unto the wicked he saith, What hast thou to do to declare my statutes, or that thou shouldest take my covenant in thy mouth? Seeing that thou hatest instruction, and castest my words behind thee, when thou sawest a thief, then thou consentedst with him, and hast been partaker with adulterers. Thou givest thy mouth to evil, and thy tongue frameth deceit. He goes on and on. But he's saying that, he doesn't need animals. He's not hungry. Our Father is not hungry. But in the Epic of Gilgamesh, it's clearly saying that the gods swarm over a sacrifice because they're starving. That is the activity of a demon who loves the flesh of animals dying. They love that blood. They swarm to it like flies. Our Father is not about that. He does not want that. Sorry for going off track there for a second there. But I thought that was interesting with the whole flood story. Okay, this is from page 87 of the Nazarene Acts, chapter 68, the visible and the invisible Shamayim, or heaven. To this Shimon, Simon the magician, answered, It seems to me to be better to believe simply that Elohim is, and that that heaven that we see is the only heaven in the whole universe. So he's saying that there's only one heaven, Simon the magician is. And Kepha, that is Peter, is debating him. But Kepha said, "Not so, but it is proper to confess one Elohim who truly is, but that there are heavens which were made by him. As also Torah says, of which one is the higher, in which also is contained the visible firmament, and that higher heaven is perpetual and ageless, with those who dwell in it, but that this visible sky is to be dissolved, and to pass away at the end of the age, in order that that heaven that is older and higher may appear after the judgment to the devoted and the worthy." To this Shimon answered, "That these things are so, as you say, may appear to those who believe them, but to him who seeks for reasons to these things, it is impossible that they can be produced from Torah, and especially concerning the immensity of light." And I'm not going to continue on here. You can read it if you like to. I think this is definitely something every follower of Yehoshua should read. But my point here is that it talks about the firmament being between the higher heaven and the lower. Like the lower heaven, I think that's where the birds fly. According to the scriptures, the birds do fly in the heaven, but they don't fly in, the higher heaven, where the angels are supposed to be, right? It talks about the firmament being this, firm divider, basically, between us and the higher heaven. And the firmament is where the stars are. The stars and the sun and the moon are supposed to be in the firmament. And I'm still trying to figure out all this and how it all works. But I think that the stars are going around in the firmament. Like the angels, I think those, the stars are supposed to be angels. I think it's because that they're connected to angels, as in like everybody has a star and it's like a representative of you or something like that. And I think those stars are inside of the firmament, and it's supposed to be firm, and I'm not sure how all this stuff works. But it could be that the sun and the moon and everything in the firmament are just sort of, the firmament might be going around us, or the angels that are, carting around the stars and the sun and the moon and all that stuff. According to Enoch, they're supposed to be in chariots. I think they're going around there, but they're in the firmament, and then the higher heaven is above them, I think. And when they're in the firmament, I don't think that the sun and moon that we see are in the firmament that we see when we look out our window, right? I think that they are a type of projection, like a 3D projection into our world from the fourth dimension of the firmament or something like that. Obviously, I don't know specifically. We're all trying to figure this out, but at least the evidence seems to point to the idea that there is a light above the sun that is guiding the sun. As I talked about in my eclipse video, it didn't seem like the moon was in front of the sun, and there's been videos where people have shown, according to like Photoshop and things like that, that there was nothing actually blocking what we were seeing as the sun in the sky. It seemed to have been blocking a light source that was coming to the sun, according to the evidence, which I think is very interesting. And the book of Enoch talks about them being in, chariots, as I mentioned earlier, and, the moon is called a she. The moon is definitely feminine, and the sun is masculine. And in Enoch, it says the sun and the moon are the same size. From the Ethiopian Enoch 71:47, and thus it goes in and out, neither slackening nor resting, but running on its chariot by day and by night. It shines with a seventh portion of the light from the moon, but the dimensions of both are equal. And Enoch 77:3, These are the two great luminaries whose orbs are as the orbs of heaven, and the dimensions of both are equal. In the orb of the sun, there is a seventh portion of light, which is added to it from the moon. And once again, of course, NASA says the sun and the moon are completely different sizes. But if we go by scripture, then they are the same size. And they weren't, even put in place until after there was green life on Earth and not beforehand. This video is called Solar Eclipse 2017 Weather Balloon at 75,600 feet VIRB 360 video by Michael Mira. 360 video of the 2017 eclipse shadow sweeping across Central Oregon. Video taken 75,600 feet above Terrebonne, Oregon. So I'm going to play a little bit of it, and Mr. Thrive and Survive is going to play a little bit of it. And I'll leave a link below to both videos so that you can check them out and give them both a thumbs up and subscribe to the channels if you like what they do. So I'm just interested in this little dot here because it seems to be shining this sun here. They're connected in some way. You can watch the video and you can see how they're working in tandem. When this moves, it moves. Well, they're not technically moving. It's the camera that's moving, really. So you can see it's still just like flickering down here. You can see it there. Now it's going up because the sun is. They're connected in some way. There's some sort of connection. And that looks higher and farther away than this does. It's getting lost in the flare a little bit, but you can see it up there. But I'll leave a link below to both videos, like I said. I hope you do check them out. I mentioned in the Nazarene Acts that it talks about the firmament being destroyed and the righteous being able to see the higher heavens when they look into the sky in the future at the end of the age. And Revelation 6 talks about this too in some way. Verse 13, and the stars of heaven fell unto the earth, even as a fig tree casteth her untimely figs, when she is shaken of a mighty wind. And the heaven departed as a scroll when it is rolled together, and every mountain and island were moved out of their places. And I was just wondering, and I still am, I'm just theorizing here and just explaining my thoughts as I go. So, I might change my mind as soon as I'm done with this video. I'm just, sharing my thoughts as I go, as I said. But, if the firmament is some sort of icy layer between us and the higher heaven, and the stars and the sun and the moon are in the firmament, and the firmament was departing like a scroll, and I think it melts with a fervent heat at some point in scripture, then if the stars were inside of this icy firmament, they could fall from the fact that it's no longer icy and holding them in anymore. And the stars are connected with angels. And so it made me think about the fallen angels being, sentenced to Tartarus. In Superman, you know that we have Jor-El and Kal-El, and the L's stand for God, like little g God, El of Elohim, And there's many of those with the fallen angel names in Enoch when it talks about the fallen angels. And so, these stories with like the superheroes and things like that are kind of characterizing the fallen angels. And so some of them get trapped in the Phantom Zone in Superman. I just thought that was interesting that it's usually connected with space and, usually above an icy layer here. So it's connected to space and it's connected with ice in the themes that we see when we see people in the Phantom Zone. And it's like a two-dimensional square, but maybe the firmament could be this two-dimensional frost Tartarus or whatever, where the angels are being held. And, when you see the Phantom Zone in various movies, they are moving around in there. They're not like frozen where they can't move. They're just trapped in this dimensional thing, dimensional jail cell, basically. And, if it's a dimensional thing, then you would think they might need portals to go in and out. And so, what I'm wondering is if the stars in the firmament wouldn't have, well, we see the sun and the moon are in the firmament, and they need portals to go through, according to the Book of Enoch. So I was thinking, if the sun and the moon are actually in the firmament, like their stars are in the firmament, then they're in this dimensional thing, and then they come out of their portals to shine light on us, the sun and the moon and everything. And when they come out, is it just like a dimensional, like this is the fourth dimension in this firmament, and they're coming into our world in a three-dimensional slice, like has been said concerning the eclipse recently, that the, you know, inside the firmament would have been where the objects passed in front of the sun that was going through the various gates. It was above us, and then, we see a three-dimensional representation off, to the side, but what's actually happening is happening around the firmament, even higher up. So these are just thoughts, because really we haven't been told tons of lies concerning what's going on in space above us. Just trying to figure out what's going on according to the scriptures and various extra-canonical texts that we have, and looking at some of the programming of, these dimensional holding jail cells, basically. If you want to see the Phantom Zone and the original Superman 2 movie from 1980, then I'll leave the link below for this one. And you can see this two-dimensional object comes here. It almost looks like ice. And then they get put into it as punishment. And you can see it's in space above some icy land there. What I was thinking about was, why would the stars fall but the sun and the moon not fall from the sky if the firmament were to melt in this theory? Well, the sun and the moon can leave through the portals. They're not, trapped there. That's not punishment. They're just in the firmament right now, and then they leave through the portals somehow. So, I think it's just the stars that are trapped in there for some reason. I don't know how it would all work. These are just theories, of course. I'll also leave a link below to Chris and Love and my live chat concerning time travel and dimensional portals and movies and TV. So, it's 5 hours and 50 minutes long. You can watch the shorter clips, I mean, the shorter live chats that we did. They were both a couple of hours long, if you'd like. But we went through a lot of information of how this stuff is showing up in movies and TV. And this is an Ezekiel's wheel. It also reminds me of the Stargate. And in both, there's a watery portal that goes through. And in this Event Horizon movie, it's going to hell. And there's stuff that comes out of there. And so the same sort of idea. In Stargate, they go in and then they find out that it's another planet they're under slavery and all that stuff. I've never seen the TV series. All I know is the movie. But it's interesting, the programming that they have. Water is always connected to portals where they go through. And so if the firmament is frozen ice, two-dimensional thing like the Phantom Zone, is that where the abyss is? There could be one below us and one above us. I think I remember there were two different places, according to Enoch, where things were being held or something. Don't quote me on that. I'm just rambling about my thoughts on things. I'm not trying to prove anything. I don't know. Just trying to figure it out, like I said. So anyway, I just thought that was interesting. I hope you enjoyed this and I wasn't rambling too much. And so you can check out the links, like I said, and hopefully you'll find something very interesting. Thanks for listening and shalom.
Hey everybody, Rich Mr. Thrive and Survive. Want to do a video here to still be a prelude. Hopefully by the end of this week I will have the interview that I want so that you can get a full explanation of all the wonderful mysteries that were revealed during the August 21st eclipse. Now I'm going to show you part of that right here. This to me shows without a doubt that the Book of Enoch and the Bible both are proven 100% valid, and NASA, of course, working for the other side, the satanic side, is lying. A lot of people did not hear my little talk that I had when I had the live hangout a few days ago, or last week, whenever it was. I understand that only about 3,000 people, I think, watched that. There's a change to my channel that is going to gradually take place. I'm still going to have the same kind of videos that I've done when I can do them, but we're really going to step up the game in a couple ways. We're going to get a lot more complex with a lot of the analysis and a lot of the things that we're going to be getting into. It's been since 2015 that the basics pretty much have been done, and I've tried to explain everything as we went along. That's going to start changing. Even this video right here will be different. Again, the other kind of videos, I will go into a lot of detail like I normally do. I'm done with even the people. Remember, a lot of people don't like the fact that I don't let people argue, because there's many channels to argue on, not here. And with this evidence, I'm done with any kind of trolling, whatever. You want to hang into your delusions after seeing stuff like this, that NASA is still telling the truth and that is your model, then keep your head stuck in a toilet somewhere on purpose and just stick with it. You guys are desperate. There's a lot of things I wish I could tell you that I know that's going on the other side. Guys that are on the flat earth side, the ball earthers are desperate. They're more desperate than the Democratic Party in the United States. And I can't say one day, remember this, what I'm telling you. I will then reveal the evidence. This is a video. Solar Eclipse 2017, weather balloon, 75,600 feet, VIRB 360 video. Now, what does that mean? You see this little control over here, and I'm going to put a full link to this. And this will not be as clear as it could be on yours because this is just, it's 1.2 gigs, I think. And it's not that long a video. It's only 9 minutes. But the data you get on this is fantastic. Look at this. I can pan all 360 degrees around. Guess what? No curve. Imagine that. So this is before the eclipse. I can pan up and see the sun. See that? Now I want to go a little bit more so you can see a couple different things, because you have this tether here to the balloon, and a lot of people are going to see that at first. There you go. That's the balloon itself and how it's tethered down to the camera equipment. There's the sun before the eclipse. And if you want to scroll back over, you can. I'm not very good at it yet. So we are going to show something unbelievable here that happened during the eclipse. Now I want to show you something real fast before I get there. As I come down here, you can see there's no shadow. Go all the way around. There's no shadow at all. Well, maybe there is out there. I don't know. But there is no shadow underneath the balloon. Make sense? Okay. Now, for those of you who say what I'm going to say is a lens flare, again, this is where it's going to get more complex, guys. I'm going to explain in this video. You can watch this video all the way through. You will see plenty of lens flares, and you will be able to see what they look like. And what I'm showing you is not a lens flare. And if you want to say that it's a lens flare, go ahead and act like you are mentally deformed, because that's what you are, because you're denying evidence that's right in front of your own face. But I understand the deniers, the cognitive dissonant people at all costs, they will walk in front of a truck before they'll believe any actual scientific evidence presented to the contrary. That's fine. I'm done with it. If you can't tell what a lens flare is or isn't, I'm done with it. So we won't be showing that here. Now there's some anomalies and things like that that will be shown, as we get our discussion with the expert later. Now, what I want to do is, and what I want to direct you to is, 3 minutes, 12 seconds into the video. Actually, we're going to 3:08. Let me mute this because we don't need to hear anything. Now, I'm going to go to 3:12. Let's get it there. Okay. Now, we're at 3:12. We're starting to get an eclipse effect right now. See the shadow? Shadow is most of the way around the balloon, not totally. Now, what happens if we pan up to see the sun? There's the sun. Amazing, huh? Now, like I said, you can watch this live, and you can see there's part of the eclipse right there on the right side. You can see how this is working. Now, what you will also see is this right here. I'm calling this source, or where God's domain is. As Enoch describes, the sun and moon both get their light from a common source. And that source is in the heavens above, which I believe to be the third heaven. Maybe, may not, I don't know. I know there's at least 3 because Paul said there was. You have a problem with the religion, see ya. Let's put this in motion, shall we? Now, what I did was I panned up. Let me pan down again. This is an awesome video. There's the surface. You can see the shadow right here close to the balloon. I'm not going to pan again. You can all do this yourself. Again, these videos are going to be less complex as far as explaining things so that they're not quite as long. Now, watch this and this. What you will note is there is an axial rotation and an axial connection between the two. This is projection, or this is the source, and this is the projection. Just like we've been saying. And wait till you see where this takes us when I talk to the expert. So let's play this a little bit. Look at this. Look at this. Now you will see as you play this all the way through. Let me pause it there so I can come back up here again. If I can come up some more so we don't lose it. There we go. Look at this. Unbelievably beautiful. Now, as you let this play till about 4:30 or so, that's when it's 4:20 roughly, I think is when it's total eclipse. This projection stays onto the sun the entire time. Let me see if I can get it back here for you. Oh, actually I can drag it that way too. Fantastic. What an utterly fantastic video. Remember, that's the source up there. If I look real close, I can see sort of like a beam, it looks like to me. Anyway, like I said, we will examine this much more in detail. Guys, the people that really want to hang on to NASA after this, they're literally sick. They are literally sick. This is not a lens flare. All right, now we're getting to the point where I want it. About 4:20. I'm going to pause it so I can catch it. Where's the sun? I know it's here because I've seen it here before. There we go. There it is. Now I'm going to back it up just a little bit. Now that I have the sun in there, maybe it was there the whole time. Look at this other stuff. But this will be fantastic stuff, guys. Wait till you see this. Wait till you see this. Wait till you see it discussed. Look at that. They're connected. And as you examine this closely, you will see there is axial rotation with this, and they are quite connected. This is not a lens flare. The lens flares never behave that way. There's never a one-to-one direct relationship with a lens flare as the camera's moving. Are you kidding me? Beautiful. Now, 4:31. Let's go down to the surface, shall we? What's going down below here? We have a shadow all the way around the balloon. If I would have gone back a little bit farther, in fact, I'm going to do that so you can see. Let me go back to about, what's up, Doc? 4:05. Look at the shadow. Completely around the balloon area. But outside the balloon area, where's that umbra penumbra? Where's that darkening that we should see, and like on the horizon should get brighter? No umbra penumbra. None whatsoever. It's impossible to create that in real life with one light source and the distances shown, and it's definitely impossible in this video to see it. So there are so many more things, guys, that I'm not even touching on in this video that are going to be covered by the end of this week, I believe. So I'll leave you with that. Enjoy this video. Watch it all the way through. Pan up and down. Watch God in action, how he does it. There's source. There's the sun we see as a projection. Much more, much more to come. Praise God. Thank you, guys. Take care. Bye.